If you're like me, you've got contacts in every single possible format. Email, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And it's becoming harder and harder to stay on top of them. To help me make sense of this mess, I use Smarter Contacts, the free app that automatically creates rich profiles for all my contacts right on my smartphone. The thing I love most about this app are the rich profiles it creates. I can see photos, job titles, company details, and updates from social networks all in one place, all in context. This is a free app and available on all mobile platforms. Head to www.untether.tv/smarter to download it today. Welcome to M-Pulse. This is episode number 4. We are filming this live over a couple of days. We don't even know what day of the week it is. Today is February 1st, and you are probably watching this on the 3rd of February, and we thank you for coming back. If you have been watching every other episode, we thank you for being here. And if you are new, welcome to M-Pulse. This is that podcast where we are actually deciphering what's going on in the mobile space by themes. And this week is our last week. We're going to be talking about the mobile trends of 2012. Dun, dun, dun. My name is Rob Woodbridge. I'm from untether.tv. It's a great resource where you can actually learn from some of the experts, some of the entrepreneurs in the mobile space as they are building the future of mobile. It's all free, long-form interviews. Go to untether.tv. And with me from Germany, as always, Peggy Ann Saltz. Peggy, I didn't give you an opportunity to plug what you're doing last week, so come on. Where are you at these days?
You mean in terms of the projects I'm working on?
Mobile Groove, talk it up here.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, I'll go in a little bit on it. Undergoing a redesign, as you know, because you've seen some of it. It's going to be awesome.
It's beautiful.
There's going to be spaces for thought leadership, dedicated microsites, really bringing together the voices of the industry, so I'm really excited about that. And I have, of course, our M-Pulse show, which is new, and which will be also there when we get our head together on our player.
Yeah.
And the rest of what I'm doing is a lot of research, a lot of projects. I just wrapped up, as we discussed in our first beta. We discussed the Net Size Guide by Gemalto. So that's wrapped up. I'm about to embark on a fantastic work. I really am looking forward to this, and I will be plugging it in the future, asking people to get involved, come forward with those very interesting case studies. And tell me about mobile advertising, mobile marketing, because I'm working on a project there with the MMA and Millennial Media. More about that later. And in addition to all of that, then, also looking at, on the back of our GigaOM interview last week, working with a company, we're just pulling together the outline for what we hope will be just a nice intro to the new breed of search engines. So it'll be a report/profile collection. Many of these, I'm sure, we'll be interviewing here as well, because one of our month's topics, I've seen to it, is dedicated to mobile search. So we have great months ahead, great topics, and it all feeds back. And it's going to be very interesting, very insightful, and hopefully stuff you don't get everywhere else. That's the whole idea.
That's right. It's either not important, or it's so important, or so ahead of its time that it's probably this one that nobody's brought it to you yet. Right? It's certainly important. And of course, you can find Peggy at mobilegroove.com, at Peggy Ann on Twitter as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I would follow her up and visit Mobile Groove if you haven't. If you're coming from my side of the family, and if you're coming from Peggy's side of the family, come on over to untether.tv, please. It's just waiting there for you.
Oh, I'm bringing them in. I'm going tomorrow to Frankfurt. I'm going to be looking for people. I want to get continent and rest of world on your show, Rob.
Nice.
Because it's going to be exciting, which is why we also have, I won't give it all away, but we do have a month dedicated to mobile in Africa, which is going to be fascinating because if anyone is advanced in mobile banking, it's Nigeria. It's not here. So
it's not there.
It's not here. It's not there either.
No.
It's there. And that's going to be exciting to find out why.
Well, that's one of those things when we start to look at the countries. I can't wait for those and those episodes because we're so insular in our thinking and we think we're so advanced, but I still have a bank account, and that makes me so 1950s, doesn't it? Compared to what's going on in Nigeria. So we're looking forward to that, and these months are rolling out. We're going to finish this week with Chet and Sharma. And his predictions, not only predictions, he did this great survey out to a huge number of thought leaders in the space about how they're looking at mobile in 2012, where they're putting the effort, not just applications like we hear so much about, but what's the most important, what's the biggest inhibitor to growth in mobile? What's the biggest enabler of growth in mobile? And some of the stories are great. And we sat down with Chetan, and it is fascinating. Chetan is from Chet and Sharma Consulting, and if you go to chetandsharma.com, you'll find some more information about. But we've got him coming up later in the show, and I think that between you and I, we could have just sat with him for forever and listened to him talk, because everything he said, there was a nugget in there, wasn't there, Peggy?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And the thing about his survey that's so exciting is that, it is us, it is our peers, it is the industry. So it's not, okay, nothing wrong with consumer surveys, yes, yeah. But to ask about, what are the companies that we might see being, what company might acquire another company. I want to have the industry weigh in on that. And that's what they do in Chetan's survey.
Well, I loved it. So he's coming up right after we dive into the stories that grabbed our attention, the concepts that grabbed our attention in this past week. I'm going to pass it off to you to go first, Peggy, because I think that this is a fascinating one, and mine really fits kind of snugly on the back of what it is that you're going to be talking about.
Well, I've been looking at mobile loyalty, mobile CRM, and also luxury brands, because I'm doing some client research. I'm also looking ahead to my books, and I think this is a very exciting area. And it's also, for me, interesting because of a disconnect there. So at one level, you have it that if you are a fan of luxury brands, you are accustomed to, you even demand one-on-one contact, you want service. All of this really pairs well with mobile because that's where it's at. So you do have many brands understanding that. You have some fascinating iPad campaigns that also make use of mobile video, another aspect of these campaigns that's coming through very strongly. So, you're seeing video ad campaigns enabling brands to enable engagement. The response rates are high. The higher ROI is what agencies and brands I'm interviewing are telling me. So in line with the research I'm doing into what brands are embracing mobile, what brands aren't, and why, and where they are sort of on the learning curve. I'm looking at a new report just this week that comes out. It's a wonderful confirmation of what I'm looking at, but it also is a wake-up call to the industry saying that, you need to be involved in mobile, because the report, which is from the L2 think tank, that's part of the New York University Stern School of Business, well, they took a look at the top 100 prestige brands, did a sort of an audit, and they found out that, okay, 2/3 of the companies have a mobile site, which means 1/3 don't. But I think more important is that 1/3 of those companies don't have a commerce-enabled site. So if we're looking at how campaigns and even advertising is going from promotion to transaction, I think it's leaving money on the table not to have a site that is retail ready. And the L2 report, that dovetails with Millennial Media Stats, that's based on studies of people, mobile retail users, together with ComScore, and they're looking at, who are the mobile retail users, what is the income bracket, and there again we see that 34% are over 100,000 a year earners, and that put that all together as I am in this research, and you see that there's a disconnect between the audience for luxury goods on mobile and the actual mobile readiness of luxury companies. And the last stat I'll leave you with that doesn't apply to me, I don't know about you, Rob, but L2 tells us that 20% of individuals with $1 million or more in investable assets are hooked on their tablet and spend 50% more time on that device than they do on their smartphone. Won't have to worry about that division of attention, will we?
No. I don't qualify into that. I do spend a lot of time on my tablet, but I don't have that much money in my bank account. We spend a lot of time talking about, in this industry, about how to make money in mobile, which is so key. And not a lot of companies are doing that right now, and they're scrambling. And companies are being impacted by the fact that people are walking into their stores with their smartphones, scanning a product and then buying it on Amazon or finding somewhere cheap around the corner to do it. And that's a very disruptive technology, application of this technology. So what are we going to see in the future? And this is a really interesting story that came out this week from Shopkick, which is a piece of hardware that you actually install into a store that sends out an audible noise to the application that's installed on the smartphone that identifies that you're in the store. Obviously, you've launched a smartphone. And then it starts pushing you deals and pushing you categories and pushing you coupons, and then it's a rewarding system as well, and it's Shopkick. And so this is a hardware investment that they have to make, these stores have to make, but they've contributed $110 million to their partners' bottom line. And I think that that's the trend that we're going to start to see moving forward, is that mobile has to drive sales. It has to drive tonnage. If you're not doing that, don't invest in mobile. So with Shopkick, what they've proven is their system keeps people in the stores and keeps people buying, and as a result, it's driven $110 million through their partners, and their partners are big. It's like Macy's and a bunch of other, certainly Fortune 100 when it comes to retail store. Macy's, Best Buy, American Eagle, Target, excuse me. And so the other piece of this is that they've got 3 million active users, and that's driving $110 million worth of revenue, which is incredible. They're in 4,000 stores, and I think that this is where, if you're building a service or an application on top of this in the retail space, you have to be driving revenue for your customer, or else you have got to get out of the way. It's just that simple. And I love this because this is tangible, and that's why it's my pick for the story of the week. Shopkick driving $110 million for their partners. What else could you want?
It's also really good, Rob, because if you think about it, the evolution of mobile advertising, what I'm looking at, is all about cross-media, cross-screen, all of those screens. So, if it's set up properly, I don't know all the details. I'm assuming there's, an opt-in and there's something going on there, not like these Minority Report scenarios.
Yeah,
but when you put it all together, it's that holistic 360-degree experience supported by this technology that I think, that adds that value, so that, if you think about it, just looking to compare a price will then be an experience that is of less value.
Yep.
Here you have something that's pushed to you, probably also aligned with your interests, etc. Sounds good. I can't wait for it to come to Europe. We'll see what happens.
Well, there you go. An innovation in North America, right? Shopkick's a North American company, but they've been around since 2010. And they've been pushing this. Now, I'm not a big believer in the hardware piece, right? I think that that's a prohibitive thing, but they've moved into software related only. But this is really for the big guys that have committed to this. But $110 million. So those were the two big stories that caught our attention this week. In concepts, we'll say. That's why you come here. Not just so much about the stories, but put those in perspective as to what you should do to drive your business or to help your clients grow. But I know what you're really here for. It's really about Chetan Sharma and his predictions and his survey. So we sat down with Chetan and had an incredible conversation. And I'm not even going to talk anymore about it. This is 30 minutes of pure gold when it comes to what's going on in the mobile industry, where he sees things going in 2012, and where you and I and Peggy and the experts that are around in the mobile space have contributed to this kind of this survey about where we all think the industry is going. This is Chetan Sharma. Well, this is a treat. This is a pleasure. Today we have Chetan Sharma from Chetan Sharma Consulting, who is going to talk to us about quite a bit about who they are, what they do, and obviously who he is. And if you don't know him, sit down, take your time, listen to this session, because it's going to be 20 or 25 minutes of pure mobile knowledge that's going to come through the screen. You're not going to be disappointed with this. Chetan did a survey at the end of last year, published a survey at the end of last year called the 2012 Mobile Industry Prediction Survey, and it is packed. Chetan, how many slides? Like 26 slides of just pure mobile numbers and insanity, isn't it? Clearly.
Yeah, it's something we do at the end of each year, and it's a lot of fun putting it together.
Well, look, we really appreciate you coming on. This is a thrill. We've never met. I'm ecstatic to kind of pull a little bit of this stuff out as much as I can in a very short period of time. And so why don't you start by just kind of giving an overview of what you do. So you write, you've got books. Come on. And don't hold back.
So yeah, I mean, I've been doing independent consulting for about 10 years, focused in the mobile space, primarily in market research, product strategy, and intellectual property. And as a part of that work, I do a number of research papers throughout the year, as well as conduct these surveys that you mentioned at the end of the year, to just gauge what's to come the following year.
So I mean, it's pretty incredible that so you've been doing this for 10 years. You've been kind of knee deep in this, and that probably explains why the results are so incredible, and the response rate is so incredible. When you're talking about that, is that this survey that you guys have that you put together? Well, I mean, go a little bit into the background of it. How many people responded? Was there anything that surprised you?
So it's typically anywhere from 150 to 250 people respond every year.
Yep.
And these are guys who work are very intimate with the mobile industry. So these are not average consumers who are opining about where things are going. These are execs from the telcos, from OEMs, content guys, and so on and so forth. So very intimately involved in the mobile industry on a day-to-day basis. And so I think getting their aggregate opinion on things to come is a good way for us to look at what's to come.
So these are really the guys who are paving the way, that are building this industry as we're going. So they're at the forefront, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean they're deeply involved in the industry. Yes.
And I mean, when you go through this, was there anything that stuck out, that surprised you, that as you went through this and you got the results? Was there anything that you didn't see? You've been doing this for a long time, but that you didn't see that really resonated with you? There
are a few. I mean, as a whole, when you're working in the industry, it's hard to be surprised by certain things. But one of the things that kind of stuck out for me was when I asked about the tablets and who are likely to be the top two players in the next 2 years. iOS and Android had an even share, and Microsoft was nowhere to be seen in that depiction. Meaning that people, even in 2 years, are not placing much bets on even Windows 8 that's coming out soon. So that was a bit surprising. I thought people will probably think that Windows 8, when it comes out in 2012, is likely to have a share impact in 2013. So apart from that, a lot of the stuff was kind of along the lines of what I would have thought. The percentages might have shifted a little bit here and there, but largely it was along the lines of what I would have thought.
Yeah, on that, I mean, this is the day after what we've had as a result of what Apple's what Apple's take, or what their quarter was like, and certainly they're dominating on the tablets still. There's really isn't a chief competitor anywhere out there. And
no, I mean Apple is just demolishing its rivals left and right, and they're just so far ahead in terms of profitability that even collectively they don't come close to Apple.
No, not at all. Peggy, you were about to ask a question.
Yeah, I was going to say, clearly it's not about surprises in the industry, but it's about sort of getting a reality check and getting a feel for, the next big thing. And what came through that I wanted you to comment on is just commerce, not in just one topic area, but in several, because it's the idea that where we're going to see the most uptake of mobile in retail, where we're going to see the most excitement in commerce. So it seems to me that it's, I won't go as far to say as 2012, the year of mobile commerce, but it does definitely seem to be out of the bowling alley, according to your survey. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, I think the momentum for mobile commerce and mobile payments has been building. And as you know, mobile commerce has been around for many years.
Yes.
But it was limited to digital content, ringtone, graphics, applications here and there. But over the last 3-4 years, with the advent of smartphones and now tablets, I think the commerce landscape is changing drastically. And it's not only just the kind of self-contained ecosystem of mobile, but mobile is starting to impact other verticals like retail, transportation, health, and so on and so forth. And there's a strong commerce component to it. I mean, to give you an example, Expedia, they didn't have a mobile app maybe 15, 18 months ago. But when they launched it, within a year, it was close. I think now 10% of their revenue is from mobile, and tablets are just incredibly successful. I mean, it's already a multi-billion-dollar business for them from zero. And so I think the pace at which things are changing, and the pace at which some of the electronic retailers are impacting the traditional retailers is just so fast and furious that a lot of the companies are going to get caught by surprise as they are trying to figure out how to react to this sudden change, which has been brewing for some time, but the impact is becoming much more visible now.
What did you have as a feel for the the breadth of the payment options and the mix there? Because there has been some movement between the ways that we're going to be doing mobile commerce. For a while it was, we thought, was it going to be contactless payments? Well, that came out in your survey. Other methods. What about that mix? What about the shift in that mix, since we can't pick the winner yet?
Yeah. So unfortunately, there's no clear. If you just look at the market, what's happening? There's no clear winner. And I have a suspicion that it is going to stay fragmented for some time to come. And the reason is it just takes a while for any new technology or new solution to come into the market. So while it might be seeded, the contactless payments technology might be seeded, but it's not mass market yet, at least in the Western European or the North American market. Obviously, in some other markets like Japan, Korea, Scandinavia, it has been around for a while. But in terms of mass market impact globally, I think it's still ways away. And then there are other means of commerce in carrier billing. You can do, what Amazon does based on your existing credit card information, and so on and so forth. So there will be multiple ways to do a commerce transaction, and retailers, they would want to have multiple options available just so that they don't exclude anybody. Over time, I think simplicity wins, and if it's very simple to do a transaction on-premise or off-premise in a way which guarantees security and privacy, as well as reduce the number of steps to conduct that transaction, I mean, that kind of wins. And so there are benefits of doing contactless payment transaction because things can be done automatically, but it's not seeded enough yet to become a mass market phenomenon just yet.
I have a question on that because when you start to think about, going beyond 2012, because everybody talked about 2011 as being the year of NFC and NFC payments and the gateway to commerce, right, through mobile devices. Clearly that you need devices with NFC built
Right.
in for that to happen. And now we're talking about 2-3 years down the road, or if ever, I would say, when it comes to NFC. But you do have these behemoths, right? You've got guys like Visa, all the credit card companies that are sitting there with all the customers, and then you've got all the carriers in the world sitting there as owners of the customer, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got little guys that are trying to play in there. Like PayPal's not a little guy, but PayPal has an established base of customers that they've set expectations.
Yeah.
So it would seem to me that for the short term, we're going to see maybe even the long term, we're going to see Visa and all the credit card companies still dominating this because they have that infrastructure, and then carriers may be getting into this because up here in Canada, Rogers has now become a chartered bank in Canada, and that opens up really interesting opportunities as well. So
Sure.
do you see it really changing over the long haul, or is it just going to be credit card companies?
Yeah, it's an excellent point. So for a time, there was this view that carriers can play an equally important role in extracting or working on that 3% transaction fee that the credit card companies get. At least in the US market, that opportunity kind of went away with some of the regulations here. But as carriers try to become banks, they have a better opportunity to compete because then they can be on equal footing and they have more assets than some of the credit card companies in terms of touching the customer. So those scenarios can work well, but largely I think in some of the more major markets, credit card companies have very successfully protected their turf, at least for right now. Unless regulations change, I don't see any major impact on their role in the value chain. And so I think they've preserved that well. The rest of the ecosystem is going to play on top of it. And so, whether it's commerce, advertising, or this facilitation of social as well as commerce, that's where everybody is going to play. And it's going to be still a multi-billion-dollar market. Yeah. But I think initially when everybody was going after the 3% share of the transaction share, I think that opportunity is limited. And unless you can truly become a bank, like Rogers, it's very hard for you to even come close to challenging them.
All right.
What about that market aside from the credit cards? You know, here based in Europe, seeing sort of rest of world, everyone who doesn't have a credit card, and we're looking at how to make those payments work. I don't want to push you too much in that direction, but it would be interesting to have your insights on the players sort of outside the big three, so to speak, and some thoughts on the value chain there, because you've got aggregators like Boku and Zon cleaning up, and you've still got other ways of making payments that are still very exciting for companies that want to sell their stuff to rest of world, bottom of pyramid, Europe, etc.
Sure. So it's a fair point. It's a very complicated ecosystem if you look at globally, and you have to really segment the market by the nations who their banking systems and credit card systems are much more developed, and so the developing nations where nothing might be available. I mean, I just came back from Bhutan, where I was doing some work with the government, and they are rolling out banking and financial services just purely based on cell phones, because it's very hard to have banking and financial services in remote villages that are, it takes days to just get there. So it's in the developing, but if you look at some of the success stories, like in Kenya or Philippines of mobile payments and mobile commerce, you will see that it was a good joint venture partnership between the financial institutions and the operators. I think individually it's very hard for either one of them to succeed in a large country. And the primary reason is feet on the ground. And so you do need, for any kind of financial services to succeed, and that's based on unbanked in that country, you need feet on the street. That means agents on the street. And since operators already have so many people working for them in throughout the country, they generally are in the best position, apart from postal services, best position to reach the customers. And as such, those ventures have been successful. But everywhere else, where either credit card companies have tried to launch things themselves, or operators have tried to do things on their own, it hasn't been that successful. So I think the key is to have a better joint venture opportunity to work together to kind of serve a region or a given country. Otherwise, such mechanism won't work.
Okay, so no showdown yet in 2012.
No, I think it's you might have to analyze country by country, but in the larger scheme of things, I think nothing major shifts, no major shifts.
All right. So one of the things that you brought up around, I mean, it has a little bit of, this is my poor segue. It's around a little bit of commerce. Sorry about this. But it's around the company that's most likely to do the biggest mobile acquisition. And you talked about Microsoft, and you brought it up in the tablet space that Microsoft isn't going to make an impact in this. And you start to look around, and what's left, do you think, in 2012 for Microsoft to buy? A lot of speculation around RIM, quite possibly to get into that, to complement their enterprise market. But talk about was there any feedback about what that might be?
It's we didn't really delve into who the potential, who they might acquire, or who these, the top three players are likely to acquire. And it remains to be seen who might be in a weaker position, say by mid-2012, to become a much stronger acquisition target.
Yeah. So
clearly, RIM has been suffering, and it's hard to see a turnaround strategy. So they become a very likely candidate for acquisition, but I'm not sure if Microsoft is the right candidate. Some of the Chinese OEMs might be better fit for them to acquire them and expand. Nokia, I think it remains to be seen whether that strategy or that story comes to a conclusion or not. I think Lumia did fairly well at CES. I think it garnered a lot of rave reviews from analysts and others. In the US, AT&T is betting big on Lumia, and I think they're planning to launch it this quarter. And as a device and as OS, I think it's great. The key where Nokia has been lacking, at least in the North American market, is carrier support. It seems like with T-Mobile and with AT&T, they're getting there. If the operators are able to put a lot of marketing dollars behind the launch, I have a suspicion that it can change the trajectory for Nokia, just like Verizon did for Android. and before Verizon's pumped in 100 million plus into marketing campaigns, Android wasn't a factor. But after that, Droid came to the market, and everything kind of changed after that. Same thing can happen to Nokia. It remains to be seen how much marketing dollars have pumped in.
I'd like to see, it's an interesting thing to speculate, because at some point, a lot of these companies, and Google's been making acquisitions. Obviously, they made some big ones in 2011. But what type of company is left that can help Microsoft move up the value chain in the mobile space? You're limited unless they look at.
Yeah, you are limited in terms of big acquisitions. Yeah. You are limited. I mean, there's in the kind of software social space, Twitter names comes up, but they want to be independent.
Yeah.
Facebook is just too big for any single acquirer. And on the OEM side, you do get into HTC, and Motorola is already gone, and REM is likely a candidate. Nokia could be a candidate depending on how they do throughout the year.
Right.
And so you're right. I mean, there are few players left of the scale that can garner $10 to $20 billion acquisition price target.
That's going to be interesting. The other area that might be interesting here is cloud traction, and I think that I think I was at GigaOM Mobilize, and one of the things that was really prominent there was the adoption of kind of a bring your own device, this utopian IT enterprise world where everything was going to work together with everything else, and maybe the conduit or the glue for that is the cloud, and according to the outcome of this is that 2012 is going to be the year of the cloud in the enterprise. As most people said, this is going to have the biggest gain the largest amount of traction in 2012. Do you believe in that number that they're going to adopt the cloud that aggressively?
So cloud is getting obviously the definition of cloud varies depending on which vendor or which player you talk to, but in general, I think the role of cloud in mobile has been expanding, well, at least last 2 years. Slowly with consumer and also with enterprise. Enterprise stuff we don't generally see or talk about, so it's less visible. But if you look at the investments that Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and operators, Verizon, AT&T, some of the bigger operators are making, you will see that there is a lot of value that they bring to the table in terms of providing good services, reducing the total cost of ownership to the customer. And so I do see that it will become an integral part of any solution. Cloud will become an integral part of any solution, mobile solution that somebody offers, whether it's just for remote authentication, it's for processing, it's for storage, whatever it might be. I think cloud is kind of here to stay, and that's supported by the incredible speeds we are seeing in terms of network, what networks are able to deliver with HTTP Plus and LTE. And so, I mean, there's obviously a tension between pricing of these buckets as well as using, but I think it will kind of sort itself out over the next few years.
And let me ask you: is that one of the statistics, the key things that for speed-wise, certainly connectivity is one of the biggest, I guess, enablers of the cloud, and obviously 4G is one of those big enablers that make it seamless for adoption. It has to be always on and fast, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest themes of CES, and CES looked like a mobile show, not just an electronic show, because everything is connected, right? Everything, connectivity as a fundamental feature for any electronic device is kind of here. I think I saw some stat like 50 to 60% of the devices introduced at CES were connected, and so it shows that connectivity is moving beyond just traditional phones and tablets. It's in everyday things, whether it's gaming devices, whether it's house meters, autos, and whatnot. So everything is getting connected in some shape or fashion, and it doesn't have to be cellular, but Wi-Fi is working just fine for kind of home and indoor environments. And so I think connectivity is probably the central theme that's driving a lot of innovation, because once you connect, the value of that connection improves the value of the device.
I think that also brings M to M back to the fore, as I understood from your observations from CES, but a completely different M to M than the one we've been writing about and thinking about for the last decade. Can you give me some view into the evolution of M to M now that we are indeed connected? Our devices, as you mentioned from CES, over 50% connected devices. It seems that we're certainly paving the way for that direction.
Yeah, I mean, initially M2M focus was primarily on modules, like energy meters or some security devices and so on and so forth. But I think the connectivity as a concept has moved beyond just these modules. It's embedded in everyday things. I think one of the sector that highlights that is the wellness sector, which is kind of the subset of the health sector, where all these connected, whether it's a pedometer or whether it's devices like Fitbit, which help you gauge how you perform on a daily basis, that help you stay healthy. I think that's a big growing segment of the market, which highlights that the connectivity is moving beyond just traditional modules, which used to be embedded in boring non-consumer devices. So it's moving to consumer devices very fast.
I mean, you always do your wireless data report, your quarterly report, which I also read, and everybody else out there, and if they don't, they should. Looking at the connectivity at one level, but at the other level, the big data problem. You've also touched upon in your survey. The question about LTE going to be with us as a topic for quite a while. How do you see the two fitting together? Because obviously you're doing research on wireless data usage and trends, and then you see these other trends coming through in the survey. Where's the connect? Where's the disconnect?
I think whenever a new technology comes in, we always think that it's going to solve a lot of the problems. It takes a while for any new technology to kind of settle in, typically anywhere from 3 to 5 years before it irons out all its problems. And so LTE is going through that phase right now. In terms of bandwidth, clearly it's 10 to 20 megabits per second is terrific speed. Anywhere from 50 to 100 millisecond latency is just remarkable. Just looking at even 3-4 years ago, I mean, that was kind of unheard of. And as we go beyond that, if you look at LTE Advanced, we are talking about 50 to 100 megabits per second. So it's remarkable how fast things are getting introduced into the market. The flip side is the cost associated with launching these LTE networks. Any large nation can expect anywhere from $2 to $10 billion in investment just on the infrastructure side, and they have to procure spectrum and so on and so forth. So there is a cost associated with launching these networks. And there's always this tension of, you give this tremendous bandwidth capability to the consumers, but if they consume too fast, the cost actually of delivering good content goes up to the operator. And so to give you an example, LTE has close to 50% advantage over HSPA plus in terms of cost of delivery. So you give that to the consumer and operators might hope that, okay, your costs are going to go down 50%. But what actually is likely to happen is consumer consumption is likely to go by 50 to 100%. And so any cost advantage that you might have garnered is likely to go away within the next 2 years, right? So what do? You move on to the next step, into the next rev, or do something different to maintain those margins for your operation. And so it's a constant battle, as well as, once consumers get used to a certain speed level, they hardly go back. And they don't want to pay more in the future for the same amount of consumption either. And so you're seeing that operators are doubling or increasing their data caps, going from 2 to 4, 10, 30 gigabytes a month. And at the end of the day, the real challenge becomes that operators have to really manage their cost per bit more effectively, not only today, but plan for the future. And that's, I think, going to be the central discussion for operators for at least many years to come. And that's the dilemma of introducing things too fast that consumers really like it, but then they really like it.
Mm-hmm.
and then they jump in and start using it, and
Yeah, I
they
mean,
become victims of their own success, right?
yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, it's a challenge. I mean, if you introduce and then they expect that it'll be always working. When there are outages, they are not happy about that, or when there are performance issues, they're not happy about that. So operators have to be. I mean, they are in a difficult spot from a network evolution point of view. They want to differentiate, move fast, but then they have to also plan for what happens when kind of the surge hits their network.
Yeah, and I think that as an iPhone user in the States and the major media centers, you suffered through that with AT&T and the iPhone, and the bandwidth availability for the iPhone, at least. You start to see what could happen.
Yeah, I mean, it just shows that you cannot just, you have to plan for this stuff. If you are experiencing problems today and you start thinking about upgrading or doing something different with your network, it's already too late. I mean, you have to plan 2 years in advance. And sometimes when these things hit you fast and furious, there's just not enough time left to react.
So I got to ask, you've gone through this survey. You've been immersed in this industry as it has evolved, right? 10 years ago there wasn't a mobile industry. I mean, I used to walk around with an iPack. Remember those, the old compact iPacks with a sleeve and a wireless card, just to get access to the internet. And it was like, it was this thick. It wasn't portable anymore. So you've gone through this transition, and so every year you must think, okay, so what is going to be the main theme of 2012, or every year that you've gone through, and so when you go through this survey and you talk to these guys and you get the results and you talk to your customers and you travel the world doing what you're doing, what do you think is going to stand out in 2012? What do you have a few things that you look at and say that's going to happen? Do you make predictions?
I think the connectivity remains a central theme, that by connecting, we make the experiences better, and it's all incremental. So, you have so many connected devices in the house, but rarely do they seamlessly work with each other. Just getting your iPad to work seamlessly with your TV, it can be a challenge. We're getting there to a point, with the specs like DLNA and Wi-Fi working together, that you can have any device communicating with each other. So I think those incremental steps need to happen so that truly it's seamless. I mean, we have to talk about seamless very loosely, but it's difficult to give the experiences so that you're watching something on an iPad and you flick and it goes to the TV, you flick, it goes to the smartphone. It's easy to put that requirement on, but it's very difficult to implement it. So I think just making inter-device communication better is going to be one theme. The other theme is the role of software and intelligence and analytics in all of this. It's a very tough problem. You can obviously look at the log files and understand consumer behavior and so on and so forth, but the data about you is stored in so many different places. It's not centralized in any shape or form. So some companies like Google and carriers are trying to do that. And so I think that will be the remaining, it'll stay a theme for many years to come, that using data to understand the consumer better and serve them better with services and content. And there's going to be a lot of fight as to who does that better in the realm of a regulatory framework that understands it better than others. I think so. Regulators are having a tough time figuring things out as well, because they're just behind the curve in terms of how fast technology is evolving.
I love it. It's these are big issues that we're going to be grappling with, and I think that doesn't typically happen when you have this kind of explosion of innovation that's happened over the last couple of years in this industry, and then you kind of got to let the dust settle a little bit and establish a new normal. And then it starts to, explode again, or it enables that next explosion when it comes to innovation. Are we kind of seeing that? Is 2012, and I mean this in a light term, but maybe is 2012 going to be kind of like the boring year compared to 2011 and 2010, and maybe 2013?
No, I think there will be big blockbuster acquisitions. There will be terrific new products launched. There will be companies going bust. So I don't think it'll be boring, but I think there will be a lot of activity. But in terms of, I'm not a big fan of a year, calling this a year of this or this a year of that, because everything is kind of gradual, normal. You don't go from 0 to 100 million customers in a matter of a year, right? Maybe if you're Apple, you may.
Exactly.
But otherwise, I mean, generally things are gradual, right? So it's going to take time to evolve any new segments. I think it's very exciting to see what mobile can do to the healthcare sector. It's very exciting to see what mobile is doing in the developing world. It's very exciting to see how payments and commerce are kind of neutralizing the advantages in certain countries. So I think it's very exciting to see all the developments, but it does take time for these to pan out.
Yeah. And what about the human aspect here? We're talking about all this innovation, then you have to sort of come to terms with it, move on to the next step. This year won't be a boring year in mobile, as you said, but it might be a year that we have to really, really focus on those very sticky issues, such as, example, really understanding privacy, really understanding what people want, how much of it they can control. We're seeing so many stories now about people, how they're controlling their social currency or having more of a say in their interactions. Yeah. Does any of this come through in what you're hearing and seeing out there, Chet? And is this the year maybe that we come to terms with it as people before we move on to the next step?
So one thing that's fascinating, and I've been asking the question about, who do you see as the most open player in the industry? And the last 4 years, it has been, every time it has been Google by a big distance. 70-80% people say Google is the most open player. Yet you see some of the complaints in the industry. It's always about Google, that Google is the one that's doing all the bad things and so on and so forth. So I think a lot of there is a disconnect between what might be happening, what regulators are thinking, and what consumers are thinking. And probably there needs to be a better dialogue as to what needs to be a basis, at a minimum requirement for privacy and security for all this data. I mean, it does lead to a lot of complexity in terms of what happens when you have my data here, but you share the data cross-border with somebody else. What kind of jurisdiction applies when somebody violates the privacy in another jurisdiction? And so there are a lot of complicated issues, and typically companies or regulators have worked in isolation. I think it's better for them to kind of have an open dialogue in a way that doesn't stifle innovation, because we clearly are pushing the boundaries of what privacy means, what responsibility means, and every time there is a kind of showcase of the privacy got violated here and there, we're trying to retrench too far back, and regulators become too excited and animated, and they try to control more than they should. But on the other hand, they do have a responsibility to have effective regulation so that bad actors are punished. But I think there needs to be much more healthier dialogue of understanding what does this evolution of technology means to the larger society, and each society or each country might come with its own answer or own conclusion, but it'll be better if we do it collectively rather than in isolation.
I love it.
I know what they're discussing over here in Germany recently, because they're thinking about, because things come a little bit later to Europe, a few years behind the U.S., and a few years behind the U.K. for that matter. And now they're even discussing having a driver's license for the internet, so that before we let our, the kiddies out on the internet, they need to understand it before they can go out and face the danger of the wide open info highway, I guess. So you're right. There you can have an extreme reaction to some of these issues.
Yeah, I mean, it's and that's typically when you don't understand. You're not living and breathing the technology every day.
No kidding. That would be frightening, quite frankly. I don't know how they regulate any of that, and I'm not even sure that I ever want to know, because that is not something that is that we want to see at all. And I think that in the U.S. where it's this the SOPA that is we're challenging these days, but we certainly don't want this on a global scale. And I think the biggest fear is that we've talked in here quite a wide-ranging conversation around the mobile industry, but the undertone here is that the mobile industry is shifting everything. I mean, it's changing the way that you consume content, your privacy. It's changing the way that you buy things, the way that you research things. It's changing the way that the healthcare system is going to work. It's changing the way that sales and education is going to work. And it takes a different mindset and a different, certainly, I guess a deeper mindset who understand the mobile space to be able to regulate this space. And you don't want to apply old rules of regulation on this new medium because you will eventually suffocate it, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think it's very interesting, and I implore all of you guys out there who are listening or watching this to go to Chetan's site at chetandsharma.com, and what you'll find there is all of the research, all the books that Chetan has authored or co-authored, including the results from this survey for mobile disruption in 2012. And I think that this is just incredible, the amount of data that you just put up there for free. It's incredible. Deep analysis as well and insights. Chet, I don't know when you find the time, but I'm very appreciative that you do this. So thank you so much.
I appreciate that. I appreciate your kind words.
Well, this has been great. I thank you for coming on to this. I would say, Peggy, do you have another question for Chet, or do you think we've exhausted him for now?
I think we've exhausted him. Maybe we'll raise our goblet to him next time.
That's exactly it. I think that the whole industry should. Chetan, thank you so much. We've been speaking with Chetan Sharma, who is go to chetansharma.com and find out all this information. It's pretty incredible what you'll find there. And obviously, look forward to the summary of 2012 and what happens in 2013 because I don't think it's going to be boring either. But there's just so much going on, and it's a good place to start your day in the mobile space. chetansharma.com. Chetan, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Well, what can be said about Chet that we didn't talk about in that interview? Those are 30 minutes that I think are so valuable that you should go back and listen to more than one time. And if there's enough demand, I will actually cut that out and put it on the website if you want that. Just reach out at untethered@gmail.com. So go to chetansharma.com. You'll get all of that information around his survey, around other reports that he's done. It's all there at chetansharma.com. Go and do it. He's such a subtle, interesting, deep thought kind of guy around this industry, and he's been involved in it for so long that boy, his insight are incredibly valuable. Go and visit his site. We're almost done. We got one last piece of business here. It's time to raise the goblet of rock. What have you got there? You got it? Yeah, there you go.
There? Yeah.
U2, Bruce Springsteen. Yep. Elvis Presley kind of puts us in an age category of fine vintage.
Exactly. That's the way I look at it, Rob.
Exactly. Fine vintage. And it's your turn to raise the goblet of rock, to highlight something that caught your attention, company, product, service, whatever it is, this past week. Who are we talking about? What are we talking about today? Peggy?
Okay. Well, over here at Mobile Groove, companies approach me because I'm always saying I want to have cool companies. Is that so good? Okay. Over here at Mobile Groove, a lot of companies approach me because I always put the call out in Twitter. If you've got great ideas, you're a good company, come on, tell me about yourself. And one company that approached me recently was Scoopshot from Scandinavia, and it's a company I think we'll be hearing a lot more about. The reason I raise my goblet of rock to it here is because I love the business model. And I'll have a lot of this in the post where I go into the analysis here, because I have not yet seen a mobile crowdsourcing business model that brings news photos together and media companies together, in a model where media companies can send out an assignment, people who download the app get the assignment, and then they go out and they take pictures with their mobile phones and fulfill that assignment and get paid. And it's an awesome model. It's a great model. And it's gathering traction in Finland, Sweden, Denmark. However, I did speak with the CEO, and he told me, and I do have an interview over at Mobile Groove, a much longer interview, and he indicated that it's coming to your neighborhood next, nice. Rob. Canada is next on the list. So it's not going to be just a European phenomenon. And I love the idea of making mobile, which is a communications device, the command central to bring together in a crowdsourcing model people who take photographs, just people, freelancers or people who are not part of the system, and then media companies that need these images together and have them work together. It'll be extending to video soon. I wonder if we'll be out of a job. No, just kidding. No, we'll have correspondence, Rob. That's it.
That's what we are.
You can put it up. Yeah, you can use Scoop Shot and say, we want to have an interview with so-and-so out there in Nigeria, right? And someone will do it for us. You never know. But it's a great company. I'll have more on my site about it. And, I raise my goblet of rock to it because I think it's a model that has a lot of legs, and particularly for the brands and advertisers. You can imagine how they can get people involved in taking pictures around their events and their concerts and then, sending it back to Coke or what have you. So, really interesting company.
Where do people find out more about them?
Oh, well, they'll find out more about it, of course, through the post, but you can go to the website, and I'm checking, and it is Scoop Shot. It's scoopshot.com.
Great.
And you can also download the app there. It's for iPhones at the moment, but extending also as well iPhone and Android, and I think it's also going to extend to, I definitely think Windows Phone. I doubt BlackBerry.
Yeah.
Obvious reasons.
Well, if they want to come to Canada, they got to get on that thing called the BlackBerry for now, anyways. Yeah. I don't know anymore. All right, so scoopshot.com. Go and take a look at it. Search in your app stores, your various app markets, your app marketplace, your app store, whatever you want to call it. Just go and take a look there for Scoop Shot and start participating. I'm gonna take a look at it as soon as I get into Canada. I'll be on there. Well, that's it for episode number 4, Peggy. Unless there's anything else.
No, that's it. Just looking forward to next week.
Well, listen, you guys who are out there watching, listening, doing whatever it is that you're doing, with us on in the background, commuting, whatever it is, we really appreciate you doing that. This is episode number 4. We're trying to make this better. We'd love some feedback. We'd love some ideas for some guests, if you know any guests. Next week, we're going to be tackling the all-important, very important voice side of things. We're going to be talking about Siri. We're going to talk about Evie. We're going to be talking about nuance. We're talking about all these things around the impact of voice on and voice activation and voice recognition and artificial intelligence on the mobile device. So that should be a great series. We're going to do that for the next 3 weeks. Can't wait to dive into that. If you have any feedback on any of this, you can reach us both. You can reach me at untether@gmail.com. Peggy, where can they reach you?
Peggy at mobilegroove.com.
Yeah. So reach out.
Also DM, Twitter. I'm out there.
Anywhere. Reach out and let us know what you think. We'd love this. And now my last plea here, 2 things. We if you like this show and you enjoyed it, we would love it if you'd help spread the word. Push this out through a Twitter post, a Facebook post, a LinkedIn post, an email. Do whatever you can. We really want this to broaden and expand and cross over the Atlantic Ocean. So please do that. And the second thing is, be sure to come back next week. Every Friday, M-Pulse will be online. Come back and enjoy episode number 5. Until then, thanks for watching, everybody. Thank you, Peggy. We'll see you next week.
Have a good one.